All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back again to the following service on diabetes. As you see on the screen, there's some information that many people have been inquiring about. The church email, if you want to get some more information about stuff from one of our church staff, is seen up top. For some of you who are asking about DVDs, how you could get some more previous DVDs from Sister O'Neill, you can be directed to her daughter's email, as seen in the second line, dougloberg@me.com. And then also there are 2 live stream channels if you want to share it with friends who are abroad or if you want to watch it again on the live stream, southamptonsdachurch.org. If you go there, you will see under our archive list where you can check all the other videos from earlier this week. Also, we have a YouTube channel. If you just type in on YouTube, Southampton SDA Church, it will pop up as well. And if you're also on YouTube, you can just type in Barbara O'Neill, and you will get many of her her presentations online. So any of those things can be used to access her previous presentations. Some have been asking about books, how they can get more books. Once again, you can email her daughter or just go on Amazon.com, and if you, it's not available. Oh, the books are unavailable. Okay, so someone said that the books are unavailable. They have a Kindle version. So if you have Kindle, you can download an ebook of that book. Just heard that it's not available right now, not in stock. I'm assuming that's what you mean. So if you email her daughter, you can find out how to get those books. Yes. Self-Healing by Design. Self-Heal by Design, sorry. And it's a green book if you see it in a picture. All right, so just to call back to your memory that their questions will be answered by Sister O'Neill during the presentation. If you have any other questions during the service, if you did not see, there are some colorful little notes out there. Those are intended for you to write down any questions, and you could put the questions into the question box, and then she will get them later on this evening to answer tomorrow evening. So if any answers come up, that's how it can be done. So I'm just going to say a word of prayer, and then without further ado, Sister O'Neill will continue the presentation. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for your many blessings. Peace be with those who are still on their way, those that are here. We thank you for all the wonderful instructions we're receiving about this great creation, the human body, and we just pray that you continually bless us this evening. So we thank you in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, that's a loud voice. We've even got some sun coming in. I think I nearly got blown away today. It's very windy. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about your pancreas. Your pancreas lives under your left rib, and your pancreas controls your blood glucose levels. And when the pancreas is not working well, then a person will possibly be diagnosed with a condition called diabetes. In Australia, there are about 300 or 400 new diabetics diagnosed every day. A lot of diabetes. And America, is it so in Bermuda? Yes. And as I've already looked at this week, the curse causeless does not come. That's Proverbs 22, verse 2. There's always a reason. Even medicine acknowledges that diabetes is a lifestyle complaint or condition. In fact, in Hippocrates' writings, that's 400 years BC, there was no mention of diabetes. So what is causing diabetes? Now, most people are fairly aware that sugar's got a big contributing factor. Is that right? It certainly does. What I'd like to do, I'd like to go with the Proverbs 14 verse 6 that says, knowledge is easy to him that understands. And I'd like to have a look at how the body deals with the glucose that gets into the blood. Now, last night we looked at how the enzymes in mouth, in gut, they break down the food to those tiny particles called glucose. Now tonight, I want to show you what happens once it gets into the blood. And never in the history of mankind have human beings eaten so many carbohydrates. And let's have a look at what carbohydrates are. And when you have a look at what they are, you quickly begin to realise why people are consuming so many carbohydrates. What would most people have for breakfast? Cereal, yep, we know because there's a whole aisle devoted to it in the supermarket. And it's a very popular food because the person only has to open the packet, pour into a bowl, put milk on it, goes like wet tissue paper down the hatch, out the door in 10 minutes. No wonder it's popular. And see what's happening today. Many people are going to bed too late because they're on technology. And then they wake up too late. And then, oh dear, what are we going to eat? That's quick. It's very quick. Another one is bread. And because these two don't take you very far, most people by mid-morning are going to, they're reaching for the cakes, biscuits, I don't know, in America they call them cookies, yeah? I know in Australia when you go to America, when you see a sign saying biscuits with gravy, we don't understand that because for us a biscuit is like a cookie. But I think in America biscuits are more like a roll or something. Also, Australians love their pies, and the Europeans have introduced us all to pizza, pasta. I don't think there's a home today without pasta, rice, another carbohydrate. My husband's an Irishman. Every main meal must contain potatoes. And last and certainly least in nutritive value is, we've done rice, is the pure crystallized acid that's been extracted from the sugarcane plant. Would that be right? Sugar. Is this what Bermudans eat a lot of? Now, all of these foods break down in the gastrointestinal tract to a little singular structure called glucose. Now, as we saw yesterday, glucose, once it's broken down to glucose, then it gets into the blood. Then it gets on the M1 main highway to another very important organ, to the liver. And the liver determines where it will go. Now, the first place it'll send the glucose is to the cell. So once again, as we did on Monday night, we're going to go to the CBD, Central Business District of the human body, is the inside workings of the cell. So the glucose goes in, and the hormone that influences the entry is insulin. So insulin is the key that unlocks the door to get that glucose into the cell. So the insulin comes in, it goes through a 20-step pathway, and this 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy. For those who know the science of this, that's the glycolytic pathway. Now, the end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate is the chemical form of glucose that gets fed into the next section. And this 8-step pathway gives us a very impressive 36 units of energy. So then the question arises, how come a 20-step pathway only gives us 2 units? And how come a 8-step pathway gives us all that? The difference is oxygen. So this is a pathway that uses oxygen. This is a pathway that doesn't have oxygen. So this pathway produces energy by the process of fermentation, whereas this pathway, it creates energy by the presence of oxygen. Now I'm going to do a couple of, I'm going to magnify those pathways. It'll make it easier to understand. So the glucose goes in, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Because there's no oxygen here, twice in those chemical reactions, energy is given off by the process of fermentation. And what comes out of there is the chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. Now, pyruvate gets fed into the 8-step pathway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But because of the presence of oxygen, every pathway is giving off energy, 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 sometimes 3, sometimes 4 units of energy. Wow, what a difference oxygen makes. How are you going to feel if every single one of your 100 trillion cells have enough oxygen to get down to there? We're not going to be able to hold you down. If you could put it into a bottle, you'd make a fortune, is that right? Do you know there's one cause for chronic fatigue syndrome, which is actually the name given to someone who's always tired? One cause, it's lack of oxygen. Now, lack of oxygen there can be 100 reasons for lack of oxygen, but you can see why. See how it's important to know what happens inside the cell? But today, we're following the journey of glucose. So glucose comes in under the action of insulin, goes through the 20-step, then the 8-step pathway, because the main aim of glucose going into the cell, whether it be brain or eye or pancreas or spleen or muscle cell, is to give us energy, yeah? Now, on a high carbohydrate diet, we've still got a lot of glucose left over. And so now, the liver causes it to be stored as glycogen. Now, these processes, as you'll see as I go through the lecture tonight, are very important to know to understand why diabetes happens and how we can conquer it. So what's glycogen stores? They're little molecules of glucose already sitting in your muscle cell. They look like little bunches of grapes, just sitting there. At Misty Mountain Health Retreat, we give our guests breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and tea like a pauper. You know, sometimes paupers don't eat. And in the morning, they get up early and go on an exercise. Where do they get the energy to do that? We haven't given them breakfast. It's your glycogen stores. They're already sitting there waiting for you to call on them. So when you start walking up that hill, the body says, well, we're running out of fuel here. Oh, and they're not eating. Quick, glycogen stores. Pluck, put through. Pluck, put through. Whenever you need it. What an amazing system. On a high carbohydrate diet, though, there's still a lot of glucose left over. And now the liver causes it to be stored in the most amazing fuel depot in the human body. It's called fat cells. And what's happening to people today on this high carbohydrate diet? They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the third place that the liver causes that glucose to be stored as fat. Now this is just basic science that I've given you. Okay, students, so does fat make you fat? What makes you fat? It's the carbs. And this fat is one of the most dangerous fats. So let's have a look at this pancreas. We're going to put our pancreas here. Here's pancreas. Now the pancreas, there's the big P, it releases insulin. And as I just showed you, insulin unlocks the door to get the glucose inside the cell. You see, when blood glucose levels are high, then high insulin's released. And what the insulin does is it gets the glucose out of the blood and into the energy pathway, or storing here, or storing as there. In fact, insulin's got a one-set mind. I must store, I must store, I must store. So a lot of people with diabetes, you'll find they're carrying excess weight. Because what's their brain doing? Through the insulin, I must store. You see that? Now there's another hormone that the pancreas releases, and it's glucagon. Now what insulin does, it gets the blood sugar level down, as I've just shown you. But if blood glucose levels go too low, glucagon's released and it gets blood sugar levels up. So can you see the pancreas releases these two main hormones that are designed to keep that blood sugar as it should be. But what's happening on this high carbohydrate diet? Huge amounts of glucose are being released, come to the cell, and something starts to develop. It's called insulin resistance. Have you heard of it? Basically, the cell wall says, I'm sick of the sight of you. I'm sick of the sight of you. So it starts to resist. And the glucose is still in the blood. And the brain's going, oh dear, quick pancreas, more insulin, more insulin, more insulin. But what's the problem? It's not lack of insulin, it's actually insulin resistant. And so eventually the pancreas just says, I'm done with this. I've had enough. I'm worn out. So it's not long after insulin resistance that diabetes happens. Diabetes mellitus simply means sugar in the urine. Because if the glucose can't get into the blood, then it has to spill out into the urine. Can you see that? Do you know the first documented cases of diabetes mellitus was just before the Black Plague in London? And you know what this doctor discovered? That it was only his wealthy patients that it was happening to, because it's only the wealthy that could afford to eat sugar. You see, what sugar does, we've got a red tonight. Yeah, you're still royal, but we're red. So blood glucose levels go up dramatically when these go in. You see, high glucose demands high insulin. So what happens is, because so much insulin's released, where's blood glucose levels going now? Too low. This is called hypoglycemia. And what does the person do down there? Oh, we'll have a candy, we'll have a Mars bar, we'll have a cup of coffee with 3 teaspoons of sugar. Will that get it up? Oh, yes. Oh, no, we're too high. Stop the glucagon, release the insulin. Oh, no, can you see what's happening here? Crisis, 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 crisis. We had the CEO of one of the big sugar mills in Australia come and do our program. He told me there's 15 teaspoons of sugar in 1 can of Coke. Do you know how much sugar cane is required for 1 teaspoon? About 1 metre. Have you ever eaten sugar cane? How long does it take to get through 2 inches? How long would it take to get through 15 metres? In other words, a can of Coke should take you about the time to drink as it takes to eat 15 metres. You see where it's just overload. So over here we're going to put a list of some of the causes, and we're going to put refined sugar. And this is the pure crystallized acid that's extracted from the sugarcane plant. And there's a little book by William Dufty called Sugar Blues. Because what does sugar cause? The blues. In fact, in the book, he mentions a British endocrinologist called Dr. John Tintara. He's made the statement, scary statement, he said, no one should go on psychiatric medication until they've had a glucose tolerance test first. Is the fact they just can't handle the sugar and it's going too low? See, look at this. God gave us one hormone, insulin, to get those blood glucose levels down. But he actually gave us 6 to get it up again. Because when we're down there, we're no good, eh? What are they? Number 1 is glucagon. That's one of them. Number 2 and 3 and 4 are 3 hormones released from the adrenal glands. One is cortisol. Another one is adrenaline. And another one is a different type of adrenaline called noradrenaline. That's what you feel on the Big Dipper. Now, these three hormones are hormones that are released in a crisis. And in a crisis, you need some energy, yeah? So these all are designed to release fat stores to give excess glucose. Glucagon's designed to release fat stores to give excess glucose. Because remember what fat is, it's storage. There's another one, number 5. Number 5 is the human growth hormone. Now, the human growth hormone's active when we're growing. And if a child's growing and needs a little bit more, that human growth hormone can release fat stores to give glucose. When you do high-intensity interval training, and I'll be defining that a little bit later, you cause a release of this human growth hormone. It's called the youth hormone. So it's designed to release fat stores to give glucose we need. Number 6 is thyroxine. Your thyroid gland controls metabolism. So when your metabolic rate drops too low, your thyroid gland can release thyroxine, which will release fat stores to give you glucose. Can you see what God designed? He designed all these hormones to get us back up again. But do you know what's happening today? Say the person's down here. The brain says, quick, pancreas, release glucagon. Pancreas says, no, we're done. We're overworked. We haven't got anything left. Oh no, quick. The little adrenal glands on top of your kidneys. Quick, release cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline. Adrenal glands say, nah, the person's drinking too much coffee and the bank account's empty. You know the lift people get from having a cup of coffee? Where's that coming from? It's coming from your bank account. It's like stopping work and living on your bank account for a couple of years. How's your bank account? Gone. It's like this lady said to me, I was at a health retreat in America, and on the second day she said, oh, Barbara, I forgot to tell you I'm on speed. Oh, speed. Yeah. Why are you on speed? I need energy. I don't have energy. Oh. And I have to tell you, I stopped yesterday because I thought I probably shouldn't be on it. Oh. She said, and I'm telling you right now, I've got no energy and I'm not happy about it. Oh. Right. I said, where do you think the energy's coming from? She said, the tablets. I said, if it was the tablets, it'd be jumping all around the table. Huh? You'd go into the chemist to buy them and you hang on, I'll just try and grab it here, it's jumping around. Huh? I said, it's coming from your bank account. In fact, the energy it gave you yesterday was today's energy. No wonder you got none. Can you see that? Well, she said, I'm telling you right now, if I go back to work and I haven't got energy, I'm going back on them. Oh. All you can say is, I'm hearing you. Can't agree. I said, I said, you're 33, I imagine you'd like to settle down and have a baby in a few years. She said, yes. I said, what sort of genetic code are you going to give that baby? Huh? Because you're exhausting your adrenal glands now, you can actually give birth to a baby with defective DNA towards the neurotransmitters in the brain, to the adrenal glands, to the pancreas. That baby can be born with, develop diabetes at a young age. That baby can get attention deficit syndrome hyperactivity. And now it was her turn to go, oh. She says. I left it with her. 2 days later, she said, I've got some energy today. I said, good. Good. And she said, and I've thrown the tablets away. Now I could say, right. Can you see that? Where's the energy coming from? I got energy now because I had a good lunch. I just had some cornbread and some soup. Can you see that's where God designs us to get energy from the food we eat that's giving us glucose to feed our cells? You see that? Not from these artificial stimulants that will give highs then lows. See, what's happening is When the blood glucose levels go down, pancreas is worn out, adrenal glands are worn out, the person hasn't exercised for 10 years, so that's worn out. The person was on the pill for 10 years, and high estrogen opposes thyroid function. Doesn't say that on the packet of the pill, does it? And I'll be looking at that Friday night. So when this goes down, these 6 different hormones designed to get it up, they're gone. And then they get diagnosed with depression. Have they got depression? No, they're just down. No wonder Dr. John Tintera says no one should go on psychiatric medication until they've had a glucose tolerance test first. And if they can't tolerate glucose, well, tonight I'm going to show you how that can be restored. So no wonder this gets the number 1. But there's something else that may surprise you. And there's something else that's actually causing blood glucose levels to go up even higher and even lower. And cereal is made out of it, bread's made out of it, cakes are made out of it, pie's made out of it, pizza's made out of it, pizza's made out of it. Whoa, what would that be? It's wheat. Wheat? One man said to me, Barbara, you're wrong. He emailed me, Jesus is the bread of life. I said, you're absolutely right. He is the bread of life. But the bread he's referring to is not the bread we have today. You see, in the 1950s, it was hybridized. It went through intensive crossbreeding to produce a plant with a high yield. 1970s, worldwide. By the 1990s, every cereal, bread, cake, pie, pizza, pasta is made out of the hybridized wheat. What did it do to the wheat? I'm going to show you what it did to the starch. And this is particularly imperative for us to understand with diabetes. It changed the starch. The starch is called amylopectin A. And amylopectin A gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast. Let me show you. We'll do some comparisons. So amylopectin A is the red. It goes up very high, very fast, and then we get a corresponding dump, which you always get. What is it? The higher you go, the harder you fall, the lower you fall. Now let me give you something to compare it with. Amylopectin B is found in bananas, potatoes, and if you're familiar with bananas and potatoes, they're fairly high on the glycemic index. So where do they sit with blood sugar level rise? They're not quite as high, not quite as fast, and not quite as low. Can you see that? Still a fair rise though. What about amylopectin C? Amylopectin C is found in chickpeas, lima beans, black-eyed beans, cannellini beans, lentils. So where does it sit? What does it do to the blood glucose levels? It gives this lovely, long, consistent delivery. What does every cell in our body want? This long, consistent, a nice steady rise, maintain, and a nice steady low. I met a man at a health retreat I did in America 2 years ago now. He's 69, he's a scientist. He said, 20 years ago I was diagnosed with prediabetes, and I was told at the health retreat I was at the time, eat legumes every day, eat beans every day. He said, I did, and I never got it. Because you can see what the beans are doing. Nice, steady delivery. Now that I've shown you that, let me show you on the glycemic index. The glycemic index is a reading of how quickly the food we eat breaks down to glucose. So your baseline with glycemic index would be 55. So anything below 55 is considered low GI. So that's good food for diabetics. Anything above 55 is considered high. That means it goes into the blood, into glucose very quick. So let me give you something to compare. So cherries are about 26. So cherries are good. good for diabetics. Grapefruit, I think we all realise that would be fairly low, 25. So where does sugar sit? Whether it's white or tan or brown or black. Sugar sits at 59. That's not a surprise. Where does wheat sit? Let's start with refined white bread, white pasta. So we'll call it the whites. White wheat, we'll call it 69. Huh? 69? Do you know what that means? A slice of white bread will get the blood sugar level up higher and quicker than a candy. And how many are a combination of these two? There's your donuts. You know, the healthiest thing about the donuts, the whole, you've probably heard that one. So cookies, biscuits, cakes. You go into a cake shop, everything is a combination of these two. I'm glad you're sitting down because this next information's shocking. Wholemeal. Wholemeal wheat. Where does wholemeal wheat sit at? 72. Whew. How could wholemeal wheat get the blood sugar level up quicker and higher than white bread or a sugar? Or, mercy. Let me explain. Because it's not refined, it's got more amylopectin A in it. You see that? Now, the book Wheat Belly, if you get that book, just go straight to the back index, look up amylopectin A, and you can read all of that. I was at one of our health retreats. I presented this, and a lady began to cry. I said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "I'm 69. I was diagnosed with diabetes 2 years ago." She said, "I do everything they tell me. I have wholemeal bread, wholemeal pasta, wholemeal cakes. I do everything they tell me. And every 6 months, I'm put on more insulin." And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. She said, "The lady down the road, she's having sweets and cakes and lollies. I don't do that." No. She said, "I'm crying tears of frustration because I've done everything they tell me and they put me in there, and it's worse." She said, "I'm crying tears of joy because you have just solved the puzzle." So when someone's a diabetic, what are they told to eat? Wholemeal. Wholemeal, yeah? Complex. And are they getting better? No, they're not. So why isn't this known? Well, America and Australia grow a lot of wheat. Big business. What do they want you to eat? And dietitians in their dietetic school go to the back of the textbook. Who funded the studies? Oh, the wheat industry and the dairy. I'm very thankful to God for the doctors who write such books. They've got decades of clinical practice up their sleeve. And you know what? You don't have to have a PhD. You don't have to have letters behind your name. Do you know all you've got to do? Just stop it, see what happens. You know, the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things. Who's got to prove it? You. Prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. It's old English, it means hold on to it. And there's an old Aussie saying, it says, if you're on a good thing, stick to it. That's why you're the doctor. Do it. See what happens. Don't have to have a blood test or a PhD for that one, do you? Just do it. So number 2. These are things that must stop, because if you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. Wheat. So what do we eat? Rye hasn't been changed, hasn't been genetically modified. Either has oats. And you can get some wild hybrids from the original wheat. It's called spelt. and I'm pretty sure you can get spelt. Now, it's a wild or a field hybrid from the original wheat. Got that? So it's a close relative, a cousin. So it's got the original simple structure. Number 3, dairy. She's taken away everything. Cow's milk's very good milk for baby calves. Very good. But you know, those baby calves have got about 5 stomachs. And you know what? You take that milk in the supermarket and give it to a newborn calf and the calf will die. There's a huge difference to that milk in the supermarket to the raw, pasteurised, organic. But I can't even handle that. Why dairy? The book The China Study, Dr. Colin Campbell, he shows that children that have cow's milk in the first year of life, they can develop a 60% greater risk of developing type 1 diabetes. Why? Well, because we only have one stomach. And by the way, the only real milk that a human being can handle is feta or yogurt. That's actually what cows' 5 stomachs get it down to. But it's not that I'm saying eat feta and yogurt, because the state of the cows today is not good. It's not good. I weaned my children at about 2.5 from breast milk, and then I just put them on food, because by then they had teeth. So they don't need milk, because they're eating food. And isn't that what milk's for? Babies. Babies. Okay, so when a gut cannot break down milk. When I was a little girl at school, in the morning recess, we all had to drink a bottle of milk. I don't know if it ever happened in Bermuda. Oh, I'll tell you what, I felt ill all morning. I'm a 5th generation Australian Scottish descent. I can't handle that. Can't handle the milk. But you had to have it, because you know what they say? It builds bones. Is that true? Do you know the countries in this world with the highest incidence of osteoporosis are the highest dairy consumers? So when a body, let's say my body, obviously could not break it down, and my little sister, she's 8 years younger than me, do you know I used to have to sit by her bed for so long? Severe eczema and then asthma. Do you know they are 2 common diseases that children get from cow's milk? And I can remember the hospital coming to my home and taking my poor little baby sister so many times. And what did she drink? Cow's milk. And did anyone tell her? No. So what happens is, my baby sister, me, we cannot handle cow's milk. So when it goes into our gut cannot break it down. So what gets into the blood is a partially digested form of protein. Let's say it looks like that. Now the body sees that as an enemy because it shouldn't be there. And so what it does, it produces an antibody, let's say the antibody's like that, to take that out. And then the antibody looks over at the pancreas. And over in the pancreas, the beta cells look like that. So those antibodies come to the beta cells in the pancreas, and what are they doing? Wiping them out. Now that's a well-researched fact. You can check that out. So what's this? Is this the breakfast many are having? And how many have diabetes? There's more. She can't take much more. Huh? Caffeine. Oh, yes, there it is. Do you know caffeine causes the pancreas to release, it actually causes the pancreas to release glucagon, because when a person has a cup of coffee, their body thinks there's a crisis. That's why you actually get a little bit of a lift. The body thinks there's a crisis. And so in a crisis, it's got to have more glucose. So can you see that is released to release that, to give some more glucose. So what happens is the pancreas gets this response, and then it goes too high, and then the insulin's released. My husband and I were having a holiday in a resort in Australia, and we're down there for breakfast, having our breakfast, and at the table just near me, there was a gentleman and his wife. They looked like they were in their 70s, and they both had a bowl of cereal with milk, and they opened a packet and put sugar all over the top, and then they had a slice of white bread with margarine, because they want to be healthy, and jam, and and a glass of orange juice and a cup of coffee. Now, is that a typical breakfast? And just before he began to eat, he opened a little black bag, got out a little injection, lifted up his shirt and injected himself. What's that? Insulin. Now, can I run over and say, stop, I know how you can overcome this? Can I do that? No, they probably call the police on me. Harassment. And they have no right to go to my table and say, you're eating too much pawpaw and pineapple there. I just hope and pray that he might stumble across my lecture on YouTube called Decoding Diabetes. See, the only hope of better things is the education of people in the right principles. They don't know. And of course, if I say, all that's giving you diabetes, what's the next question? Well, what are we going to eat? Because I see, we go to Fiji sometimes, maybe we'll have a holiday there. Fiji, with their beautiful cassavas and coconuts, all that beautiful food, and you know what they've got in the restaurant? Cereal, bread. Because that's what all the Aussies want. Now, there is a little tray of pawpaw and pineapple, and after we've been there a few breakfasts, they get bigger and bigger, because we just about eat it all. So caffeine also must stop. Are you told this by the nutritionist if you have diabetes? And why is that? Because they're drinking coffee. I used to be a psych nurse. They're all drinking it. So how come they don't have mental illness or diabetes? Guess what? They do. They do. So all of these things add to it. What about margarine? What margarine does, well, it's an altered fat, and it begins blocking the receptor sites on the cell for insulin. In fact, margarine is so toxic, it's one molecular structure short of plastic. So if you're going to eat margarine, you should eat the container it comes in. It's a saturated fat. If it was polyunsaturated, you'd open the lid and it'd all move, all be liquid. You see that? So now we're going to go onto the positive side. Increase. So there are things that we've got to stop, and there are things that we've got to implement to the point of even increase, and one is water. You see, your pancreas requires water to even make the insulin and the glucagon. So how much water do we need? At least 8 glasses a day. That's at least. Now, the way to get the water inside the cell is to take that 1 crystal of Celtic salt. Tomorrow night, when I look at heart health, I'll be looking at salt in detail. 1 crystal of the Celtic salt. If you don't have Celtic salt and you have Himalayan salt, it's just as good. How much? About the size of a sesame seed. Just a little crystal of Celtic salt. And those minerals will pull the water inside the cell. That's the good news. What we also have to increase is exercise. So let's have a look at high intensity interval training. What is it? As the name implies, they are intervals of high intensity and intervals of recovery. So high intensity, really, you only have to do that for about 30 seconds. Now, that doesn't sound very long. Try running up a hill for 30 seconds. After 20 seconds, my body says that's enough. After 25 seconds, my body says this is getting ridiculous. After 30 seconds, I feel like I'm dying. That's about what you've got to get to. And you know, the Bible says that life comes from death. Is that right? Romans 6 verse 7 says, he that is dead is freed from sin. And when those lentils that look dead in your jar in the cupboard, you put some water on them and they'll come alive. This is hard work. This is no gentle stroll. And then a recovery time of approximately 2 to 3 minutes. Your recovery time is your indicator of your fitness. So if you're very fit, your recovery time might be 1.5 minutes. Dr. Al Sears, in his book Pace, he gives a story of a lady who did 7 seconds high intensity and she needed 15 minutes to recover. Whew. Now that won't be tomorrow. Tomorrow might be 10 minutes. But it's a good idea to note your recovery time because you will find that that will change, and then it's usually done for a cycle. It's usually done for a cycle of 6. If you can't do a cycle of 6, start with a cycle of 3 and try and build up to the 6. Can you do the mathematics on that? What's that? It's not much, is it? And that high-intensity interval training will do more for you than a 1-hour walk. It's a very powerful form of exercise. So when you do the high-intensity interval training, some amazing things are happening in the cell, and that's what I want to show you now. And what's happening in the cell is going to affect the diabetes. So inside the cell, when you're going to the end of your first set of high intensity, your glycogen stores are getting plucked. In fact, when you get to the end of the second set, they've probably all been plucked because your body's screaming out for fuel. So when that happens, the pituitary gland releases the human growth hormone. And the human growth hormone, called youth hormone, and you'll see why. The human growth hormone activates hormone-sensitive lipase. And hormone-sensitive lipase is an enzyme that breaks down fat. What sort of fat does this lipase break down? Do you remember yesterday we looked at sublingual lipase that breaks down saturated fat? We looked at pancreatic lipase that breaks down polyunsaturated fat. Well, what fat does that lipase break down? Your fat. Because remember, that's what fat is, fuel stores. So when you start to do your high-intensity interval training, getting to the end of your second set about, the pituitary gland releases the human growth hormone. Hormone-sensitive lipase is released that start releasing more fuel. The human growth hormone causes the body to stop burning glucose as fuel and become a fat burner. Because we need fuel. You see, glucose, it burns at 4 calories per gram. Whereas fat, it burns at 9 calories per gram. Every weight loss book has this in psychedelic colours, is that right? And they use that as the reason, don't eat fat, because it'll give you more than twice the calories that glucose will give you, but they don't understand what a calorie is. A calorie is a unit of energy. So if you want a high energy food, what do you eat? Fat. Hard to say, isn't it? Because we've actually been told how bad fat is. Well, do you know one of the worst fats that can get into your body is the fat stores from eating too many carbohydrates. And when you see fat-free milk or fat-free yogurt, what have they done to it? Taken all the fat out. So now it doesn't taste any good. So what do they put into it to make it taste good? sugar. Now you got a worse fat than if you ate the whole stuff. But you can get some very nice coconut yogurts now, can't you? And as you'll find out tomorrow night, saturated fat doesn't cause heart disease. Huh? There's no proof. If you find any, bring it with you tomorrow night. Because I've never found it. And I'm going to be quoting some cardiovascular surgeons who say it's a myth. So fat's not bad. It's only when it's been altered, like margarine, or too many carbohydrates cause it to dump on your internal organs. So can you see what's happening now? Gone to the end of the second set of high-intensity interval training. Human growth hormones released, starts burning fat as fuel. No wonder the fat's going to give it more than twice the units of energy. The human growth hormone increases the body's ability to utilize protein. We've been looking at the importance of protein, the importance of eating sufficient protein, the importance of not drinking with your meals so you're not watering it down, as we saw last night. Now we're looking at another aspect. High-intensity interval training causes a release of the human growth hormone, which causes your body to better utilize the protein. My son James, who, does bodybuilding for a hobby, his main job is building houses. Bodybuilding is his hobby. He said to me, it's like this. When you do your high-intensity exercise, you're actually setting up a bed of hot coals at the cellular level. And when you've got a bed of hot coals in your cell, you can eat. Because there's a bed of hot coals there and it's just going to burn up that fuel. It's as simple as this. If you want to eat, you've got to work for it. The last thing the human growth hormone does, it increases the circulation of the blood to the skin. Do you know what that means? It slows down aging. Wow, that's good news. It's like the man that told me that he'd lost 60 kilos, what would it be, 120 pounds, something like that. It's a lot of weight. He said to me, and he did it by stopping the carbs. What did he eat? I'll show you the food in a minute, but it's high fibre, generous proteins and good fats. And he did the high-intensity interval training, but he always had this lump of tissue here. And he looked at that and he thought, if that's what I got to wear because of what I let my body get to, so be it. He said, I noticed after a couple of years it was gone. What did that? That's your high-intensity interval training. Causing a release of the human growth hormone, increasing the circulation of the blood to the skin, so little by little by little, that pulled it in. No wonder the movie stars pay $1,000 a week for the human growth hormone. Well, I'm offering it to you cut price tonight. 15 minutes of high-intensity interval training a day will cause a release of the human growth hormone that will remain active for 24 hours. What a bargain. How many hours in a day? 24. We got 15. Yeah, we got 15. And the best time to do it is when your stomach's empty. So before breakfast is the best time. I know it's a little bit hard at the moment because you've just gone to daylight saving. It's dark, yeah? So what's happening at the cellular level? We've used up our glycogen stores, and now the human growth hormone's released, so we're starting to break up fat stores. Do you know what this is all supplying? Fuel to the cell. In fact, that cell's crying out for more fuel, and so you know what it does? It develops extra insulin receptor sites. Goodbye, insulin resistance. If a person has insulin resistance, stops that, implements that high-intensity interval training, That insulin resistant can be turned around in a week. How's that? What an amazing body we live in. That is why this is such a powerful form of exercise. So I'm going to tell you the story of a young man named Paul who came to our retreat. He was a little overweight. He was, I think he was 19, and he got type 1 diabetes at the age of 15 from a course of very strong antibiotics. Because sometimes the side effect of some medication can damage the pancreas. He was told his pancreas was dead. I said, is it gangrene? What's dead? Do you know if there's blood going through that pancreas, there's life, because the life of the flesh is in the blood. So he's a very quiet young man, and he began to obviously do our program. And he told me this later. He was with us for 4 weeks. He did 2 weeks program, and he worked in the garden with my son for 2 weeks. The first week, if he got a blood sugar level low in the middle of the night, he'd take a lolly, or you say candy. Would that get it up? Oh yes, but always a headache, because boom, always get a headache. Second week, he was convicted he really shouldn't do that. So he'd get an apple. Takes a while to eat an apple in the middle of the night, doesn't it? It would get it up, but he wouldn't get the headache. Third week, if he got a blood sugar level low in the middle of the night, he'd get out of bed on the floor and do 30 push-ups. Boom, boom, boom. Blood sugar level would come up. Where'd that come from? His glycogen stores. Already waiting in the cell, ready to be plucked. Do you know what he said to me by the end of the third week? Why didn't anyone tell me about glycogen? Huh? Would you say it's the diabetic's best kept secret? It's already there. Just get on that exercise bike, push-ups. That will release it. It'll just be released on demand. By the way, why was he getting blood sugar level lows? Because he was on too much insulin. Because the program we were giving him, he didn't need that much. So by the third week, he'd dropped his insulin by 90%. He told me that he got up one morning and his blood glucose levels were, so I don't know what your readings are, but in Australia, blood glucose levels should be between, 5 and 7. Well, he got up one morning and they were 3. That's nearly passing out. Had a salt, big drink of water, went for a high-intensity run, came back 20 minutes later, tested his blood glucose levels, 9. Where'd that come from? He hadn't eaten anything. Because if a person takes a lolly, bang, the headache, but where are they an hour later? Down. One man rang me up, he said, Barbara, I got a diabetic low on the bus the other day. I passed out. I said, oh, where's my why? So I began to investigate. What time did you get the low? 2 o'clock. Oh, what'd you have for lunch? I didn't have lunch. Oh, what'd you have for brunch? Oh, you can see he didn't really want to talk to me about that. 2 donuts and a can of Coke. What caused the low? I went, this isn't rocket science, mate. I said, if you'd had a salad sandwich on spelt bread, you wouldn't have got that low. See, the higher you go, the harder you fall. If someone was having a diabetic low in front of me and they had a candy in their pocket, I'd put it in their mouth. Probably save their life. But as they came round, I'd say to them, would you like me to show you how that need never happen again? And by the way, what's a diabetic low? It's actually too much insulin. It's taken you too low. So that's why exercise, that's vital. Can't run? Exercise bike. Because you're holding on and your legs can go very, very fast and then you can go slow for a while. And rebounding. You want to do high intensity on the rebound? Try jogging. You can get really fast on that rebounder. So what else do we have to increase? Increase sleep. Between the hours of 10 p.m. at the moment and 3 a.m., that's daylight saving time. Your body doesn't know about daylight saving, and so in the winter months, well, I don't know whether you get winter, but it's between 9 and 2. They're the hours that your healing takes place at twice the rate. They're the hours your body and your batteries are being recharged. So probably we all should say, not so much increase, but implement. So to implement low glycemic foods. You know, that can make a huge difference to a diabetic. So instead of bananas, they eat blueberries. Instead of white potato, they eat sweet potato or pumpkin. So it can be as simple as that. Instead of white rice, basmati or brown rice. It's not hard to get a glycemic index list. That can make a huge difference to blood glucose levels. Now the next one might surprise you. Breakfast like a king. And lunch like a queen. And sometimes the queen eats as much as the king. And dinner is a pauper. That's not much. So I'd like to tell you now, or before I tell you this story, what should the food be? The food should be high fibre. And all your plant-based foods are high in fibre. Generous amounts of protein. So what's your protein? Your protein is your beans, your nuts, your seeds. Nuts, don't overdo them. I was in Tennessee not long ago, and a man and his wife picked me up, and when he stood up, I went up, he's 6'10". He needs more nuts than me. See that? So let's say 8 to 10, eh? And seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds. That's an easy way to boost your protein. And healthy fats. What are your healthy fats? Fats as they come from the hand of the Creator. So there's your nuts and your seeds. Also your coconut oil, olive oil. They're concentrated foods. You don't need much, but you do need a little bit of fat. Because 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is fat. Except for the brain cell, that's 70% fat. And 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is protein. You see, the 3 essential food groups, 3 essentials are these 3. Fibre, protein and fat. Can you see what's happening today? People are overdoing the non-essential and depriving themselves of the 3 essentials. Now, carbohydrates aren't bad. What a relief. My husband would never forgive me if the potatoes stopped. Potatoes aren't bad, and rice is a great option when you're not eating as much. Carbohydrates aren't bad. It's only when they're overdone and refined. And isn't that what most people are doing? Cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, pasta for tea. What's that? It's not only almost 100% carbs, it's also 100% wheat. So let me tell you the story of Bobby. Bobby came to Alabama to a health retreat we did in 2016, June. He's 62, he's carrying a lot of weight. Came in a wheelchair. He said, I've spent $1 million in the last year on my health. And the doctors have just told me they can do no more for me. He said recently they took the lymph nodes out of my groin to see if they could find out why I've got diabetes. I still can't understand that one. So when he's flying on the plane from from Florida to Alabama, what happens to his legs? They swell up. So he's on a wheelchair. He'd just spent a fortune on these stockings to try and hold the swelling down. He was on medication for blood pressure, for cholesterol, for blood thinning. He was on 90 units of insulin a day for his diabetes. He said, I'm a mess. I said, I don't know if you can do anything for me. But he said, a friend of mine told me you might be able to. He said, I watched one of your lectures and I thought this makes sense. I think that's why the lectures are popular. They just make sense. Isn't that what we want? Someone said, Barbara, can I copy the DVDs? I said, do what you want. It's God's information. Is that right? Pass it out. So I said, well, you won't need those bandages anymore. He said, I've just paid a small fortune for these bandages. I said, what will get that fluid dispersed through your body is rebounding. I said, we've got a frame, hold on to it every day. Even do a minute every hour. Just get on there and get that moving. I got him walking barefoot on the grass, but not too much walking because of the weight on his feet. He did our program. He did 2 days on juices. Blood glucose levels are coming down. Did you hear that? On juices. He used to sit next to me and he'd say, Barbara, am I right? Is this what I should be eating in my meal? And I'd look and I'd say, yeah, it's pretty good. See, that was his guideline. I remember one meal I said, I got 2 potatoes there, give me one. Go a bit lower on the potato. When he went home, he'd reduced his insulin to 10 units a day. That's incredible. That's after 2 weeks. Now, this is June. He emailed me in August. He said, I'm off all my medication. All his medication. Now, this man, he was the CEO of several large companies. He was a pretty savvy businessman. And he said, this health thing's frustrating me because in business, if it doesn't work, you don't keep doing it. And he used to say to me, anything you tell me, I will do. And I believed him because I knew that $1 million, and he was worse and addicted to these drugs. So some of them he had to ease off, some of them he could stop straight away. So he emailed me in August, off all his medication. He said, my doctors are astonished. Do you know it's up to us to astonish our doctors? Is that right? Yeah. And you know what? They want us to prove to them we can do it. Because so many people, if they stop their medication, they go down. Because you've got to implement everything first, get your body going, and then you can ease off that medication. He said, I'm on no medication at all. He said, I'm cycling 6 miles a day. He said, I do 30 laps in the pool a day, and I rebound 3 times a day. Can you see those 3 exercises are the only exercises he can do? Because they've taken his lymph nodes out of his leg, one leg. So if he puts too much weight on exercise on those feet, those legs will swell. He'll ever be managing those legs because the lymph nodes have gone. But he said, I'm managing it. So this is by so that's nearly 3 months. He said, I have lost 45 pounds. He said, my friends can hardly recognize me. He said, my wife's not interested. She just said, this is your baby. I like my coffee and my sweet cakes. Well, guess what? By the end of August, she's interested. Because she was carrying a bit of weight too. And no lady likes to carry a little bit of weight. So he said to me, he emailed me about 2 months after that. He said, my weight is still dropping down. He said, I feel so good. He said, I haven't felt like this since my 30s. He said, my weight's steadily dropping. He said, I'm starting to plateau out. But he said, my wife, she is so excited. She has lost, I think in 1 month, she lost, I think it was 15 pounds. And he said, now her girlfriends are interested. Can you see that it's up to us? We're the ones that give the message. I've had people say to me, my girlfriends are looking at me and saying, okay, what have you done? What have you done? Because if you go from these lectures excited and try and tell your friends, they're all going to run the other way. Is that right? What's the best message you can give them? It's what's happening with you. Absolutely. Absolutely. So these foods are the foods that make the difference. And these are the foods that will give that long, slow, steady, but sure delivery of fuel to the cell, because it's all about the cell. Isn't that the CBD? The central business district of the human body is the inside workings of the cell. So, what is so dangerous about margarine? Well, I'm going to show you, I'm going to draw it here, the molecular structure. So when I say the word molecular, don't get scared, I'm going to make it easy. This is the molecular structure of the fat omega-3. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So this omega-3 has 18 little links in it. And every link has a carbon atom connected here. They're all carbon atoms. And either side we've got hydrogen. So I'm just going to do the hydrogen atoms like that. They're hydrogen atoms. And in 1 drop of oil, you've got about 19 trillion of these. But when you know how that structure works, then you begin to understand what omega-3 means. And omega-3 is very important, and you will see why. So let's say we're looking at chia. You've heard of chia? Chia and flax. Chia and flax are the highest in the vegetable kingdom of omega-3. And they have 3 double bonds. That's what the 3 means. It means that the 3rd carbon atom, so 1, 2, 3, there's a double bond. So whenever you've got a double bond, those 2 hydrogen atoms go, and these ones underneath develop an electromagnetic field between them. And what that means is that now it has a kink in it. So there are 3 double bonds. So there's 1, 2, 3. There's another one there, so they go. And these 2 develop an electromagnetic field. 1, 2, 3, and another one, double bond there. So this oil is called a polyunsaturated fat, meaning there are 3 double bonds and there's empty spots on the scale. Can you see that? So when you have got sat, we'll just say polyunsaturated. So when you've got 3 repelling actions, it means you've got 1, 2, 3. So this oil is a very thin oil. It's a very fluid oil. And aren't we circular people? Now, because it's such a fluid oil, that gives strength and integrity to the membrane around every cell in the body. And when that membrane has strength, it's actually more open to developing the receptor sites. So there's your polyunsaturated found in your flax and your chia. So what about omega-6? What's that one? Well, that's also a long-chain fatty acid with 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll just pretend that's about 18. 6 means that the sixth carbon atom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And omega-6 you'll find in sunflower. And there are 2 double bonds. So one there, 1, 2, 3, and another one there. So there's 2 repelling there. So that's 2 kinks. 1, 2. See, it's not as thin an oil, but it's still quite a good oil. So here you've got hydrogen along here, and along here, and along here, and along here. So your sunflower's quite a good oil too. What about omega-9? Omega-9 is found in olive. Aha, here's the oil that the Bible talks about, and almond. What does the 9 mean? It means that the 9th carbon atom is a double bond. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so there it is there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So can you see these are all what's called long-chain fatty acids? This one's omega-3 with 3 double bonds. This one's omega-6. The first double bond is at the 6th point, but it's got 2 double bonds. And with almond and olive oil, the first double bond is found at the number 9. And it has 1 double bond. So that's the only one that's there. So as a result, this oil only has 1 kink. And it's a very thick oil, isn't it? Because it's only got 1 kink. And it's called a monounsaturated fatty acid because 1 double bond. What about saturated fat? Here's coconut. Coconut only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's got short and medium chain fatty acids, and there are no double bonds in the coconut. There's the coconut. No double bonds. So what does that mean? Every spot's full. So what's this oil like in cold weather? Solid. So because every spot is full, what's it called? Saturated. So what's the best oil? Well, which body function are you referring to? Because the body loves using this omega-3 for cell membrane function and repair. That's why after your workout in the morning and you sit down to eat breakfast, you really should grind up your flax or sprinkle chia over everything. Because those muscles fibres that broke and are rebuilding from your exercise workout, this omega-3 will speed up that recovery time. By the way, having a hot shower finished with cold afterward is another way to speed up repair. So can you see why the coconut and the olive are the best oils for us? Because coconut oil doesn't deteriorate because there are no double bonds. And if you wanted to fry a bit of garlic, ginger, onion, what would you fry it in? What oil can handle heat? Coconut. It's no double bonds. If I use olive oil, I put that in at the end of my cooking because it does have 1 double bond. That's why you should buy first cold-pressed, extra virgin olive oil, and it should be in a dark cupboard in your house. You see, when women used to press the olive oil all through Europe, if they put it in a bowl on the table, within a couple of hours it's got a bitter taste. What's the bitter taste? The air, light and oxygen gets attracted into these empty spots. So this one here deteriorates very quickly. That's why if you grind it, you've got to eat it or freeze it. Because the light, heat and oxygen can be attracted into those spots. But flax oil, if you buy flax oil, it should be in a dark bottle or a tin in the fridge. Because the light, heat and oxygen can destroy that. Olive oil doesn't deteriorate as quickly. It's only got one double bond, but it still should be kept in a dark spot. Now, 100 years ago, the only two vegetable oils used were olive and coconut, because they're the only oils that are extracted from the flesh of the plant. And because they're extracted from the flesh of the plant, they could be easily extracted by women in their kitchens. And everyone used to get their polyunsaturated fats from just eating the nuts and the seeds. But about 100 years ago, they developed high-heat chemical equipment to extract the oil from the hard seed. So when they use heat to extract the oil, what's happening to these double bonds? Destroyed. So your sunflower oils, your safflower oils, your peanut oils, they've already been destroyed. And they're in clear bottles, plastic bottles. Now, they are dangerous oils. My suggestion is we get our oils from the coconut and the olive, and we get all our polyunsaturated fats by just eating the seeds and the nuts. That's the easiest way to do it. So what I wanted to show you was how margarine was made. Let's say they're going to make margarine out of this. They've got a problem. It's liquid. So how do they saturate it? Well, using nickel or aluminium as catalysts, they saturate it with hydrogen ions. Do you know what that means? Every tub of margarine has nickel or aluminium, and I think we all know what that does to the brain. So they saturate it with hydrogen ions, causing one of the hydrogen atoms under here to flip over to the other side. Now we've lost our double bond. This hydrogen atom's flipped over here, and now the oil is solid. That's what they want. Now it'll spread. Now that oil is totally destroyed. So when a person eats margarine and it goes into the body says, alien from out of space has just entered. Delete it as quickly as possible. The skin will do. Do you know that skin cancer rates have risen since people are eating margarine? And as I'll show you tomorrow night, they introduced margarine to reduce heart disease. Has it? No. No. And when are they going to realise this? It was introduced in the 80s. And it's made no difference at all. In fact, cancer rates have come up. Because you've now got something that the body doesn't know, doesn't recognise. So very dangerous to the body. In fact, if a person has a live blood analysis after they've eaten margarine, you can observe the white blood cells exploding. That's how dangerous that is. So the oils are important. I just touched on that. If you go to YouTube and look up Barbara O'Neill fats, I do a whole presentation in a little bit more detail on that. But common sense tells us that the fats we should be getting from our foods and a little bit from those two oils that don't deteriorate as quickly. I don't make oils from scratch. Maybe if I lived in Fiji I would. But you can buy some very good quality olive oils now, the first cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil. Do you know more people put olive oil on their bread than any other oil or spread? And I'm referring to Europe. Have you ever been to an Italian restaurant and you dip the bread in the oil? Yeah. When I have a waffle in the morning, I fill all those little holes up with olive oil. That's what I do. I love olive oil. You see, fat doesn't make you fat. As you have seen, it is the high carbohydrate that does that. So what I'd like to do now, we've looked at water, we've looked at exercise, we've looked at the importance of sleep, we've looked at the importance of the food. I'd like to give you some illustrations of what to eat. So let's have a look at some breakfasts. So breakfast. I'm going to give a couple of options here. One breakfast could be low GI fruit. So that might be, this is specifically for your diabetic, but you don't have to be a diabetic to eat this because it's so delicious. So low GI fruits, all your berries are low GI. Blackberries, blueberries, cherries, boysenberries. Low GI fruit. And now we'll do a grain. So the grain might be oats, or it might be millet. Now millet cooks up to a very nice porridge, but you've got to do 1 millet to 3 water. So most grains are 1 grain to 2 water, but millet needs a bit more water. Or quinoa. Or rice. And ideally, the 2 rices that are low GI are basmati and also brown. Now, if you aren't an early riser, you can put these in crock pots overnight. So there's quite a few things that you can do. Now, if someone's wanting to conquer diabetes, they need to keep away from even the maple syrups and the honeys, because that can give a blood sugar spike until that pancreas is happy again. So what can you use to sweeten that? Stewed Granny Smith apples. Granny Smith apples are very low on the glycemic index. And if they are bitter, there's one sweetener that will not get a spike in your blood sugar, and that is stevia. Now, most people say, I don't like stevia, and I say, why? Because it's bitter. You know why? They've used too much. It's almost hard to get your mind around the fact that 1/16 of a teaspoon of stevia equals 2 teaspoons of sugar. So people can't believe that you only use that much, so they use a little bit more, and if you use too much, you'll get a bitter taste. So start little. Start with just the tiniest bits. It's easier to add, you can't take it out. Coconut milk. This is a great and delicious additive on top of your breakfast. Or you could make a nut milk. So I'm going to give you a recipe for a delicious nut milk or cream that we do. 1 cup of, we usually do Brazil nuts. 1 cup of Brazil nuts and 1 tin of pears in natural juice. Now pears are low GI. And then you might do, I don't know, 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. And then you just blend well. And that makes a very delicious cream. Or you could use cashews. Or if you can get macadamias, you could do them. You blend it until it's like velvet. Pardon? Can you do cashew? Yes, same. Yep. And that makes a beautiful sweet, slightly sweet cream. So can you see that's enough to sweeten that? And then on top of that, put your chia, ground flax. And these really bring your protein up. Almonds maybe, or you could make that with almonds. So does this pass the test in high fibre? It's all fibre. Does it pass the test in protein? You've got protein in all of your grains, and you've got protein in your nuts, seeds, and a little bit in your coconut milk and your nut milk. Does it pass the test on fats? You've got fats there, and there. So that that will give a nice low blood sugar level, and that will keep you going for 4.5, 5 hours. That's good news, isn't it? Okay, now we're going to do another breakfast because not everyone might like that breakfast. And it's important to be happy with what you're eating. So here's breakfast number 2, smoothie. Now, I've met a few bachelors and they like their smoothies. So 1 cup of coconut water, or you could do almond milk, or you could do soy milk, as long as it's non-GMO. It's whatever you like. And then 1 dessert spoon. Do you know dessert spoons? English do, Americans don't. 2 teaspoons. It's in my book. All the Americans say, what's a DSTP? It's 2 teaspoons. We call it a dessert spoon. That's what you eat your dessert with, you know, that size. So, okay, 1 dessert spoon of protein powder. So have a look for, you don't want protein powders with 100 ingredients. You don't want all that because you're going to put the flavour in. So look for hemp, look for pea protein, look for brown rice protein, not whey, because whey protein comes from the dairy. And 1 dessert spoon of coconut milk. In America they call it milk, in Australia we call it cream, so that makes it creamy. Then berries, blackberries, blueberries, whatever berries, and then chia, ground flax. And some people like to put a few green leaves in there. It's whatever you like. So has that got fibre? Here's the fibre in your flax and your seeds. Here's the fibre in your berries. Has it got protein? Oh yes, there's your protein powder and your chia and your ground flax. Has it got fats? Got good fats in your coconut milk and your chia and your flax. You see that? That'd probably keep me going, but my friend who was 6'10", he might need to double that. You see what I mean? If that takes you to lunch, you got a good one. If it only takes you to 10 o'clock, well, tomorrow morning put a bit more in. Do I eat at 10? No, just keep drinking. Lots of water. You'll eat a good lunch. If my kids used to come to me an hour before the lunch and say, I'm hungry, I'd say, great. You can eat your lunch when it comes. If you say great to your kids, they think it is great. Hopefully, eventually. Breakfast number 3. Breakfast number 3 could be a sourdough spelt toast. Or it might be a waffle made out of, you can make them out of soy or chickpeas. See, this is getting your protein up. And oats or millets, they're a couple of grains. And I'm sure there are people here in this church that can give you some recipes for that. And then on the toast, you might have olive oil. If you're not fussed on putting olive oil on, you might put some coconut oil on. Or you might generously put a big layer of avocado on. That's an O. And if you're in a hurry, you might just put tomato on top. But if you've got time, and you might do this the night before, you might put savoury lentils on that. You might put scrambled tofu on that. And always finish with a nice handful of nuts. So does it pass the test? Fibre? It's all got fibre. protein. You got protein in your toast. You got protein in your waffles. You got protein in your scrambled tofu and lentils. Fats. You got fats in your olive and coconut. You got fats in your avocado, in your nuts. Passes the test. So what I've just given you there is probably about 8 different breakfasts. Is that right? Have I given you enough? You just got to, it's important to eat what you like. But the waffles can be a great alternative if you're still looking for a bread that works. Because you can make a heap of waffles and freeze them. Lunch. Lunch, have a big salad. And what's the salad got in it? Everything you like. I love dark green leaves, so I always have that. I also like grated carrot. I like some avocado and tomato. If you like olives, put olives in. Olives are fine. So basically, it's what you like. I'm not fussed on bell pepper. Doesn't sit well with me. Seems to repeat on me. Maybe it's because I've got arthritis in my genes. But if you like bell pepper and it sits well, eat it. My husband doesn't like raw onion, so I actually I never put that. But if you like raw onion, put the raw onion in. A really nice dressing is just get a jar, put olive oil, lemon juice, crushed garlic, salt, shake it up, gets better every day. Put a few herbs in it. Vegetables. So for the diabetic, go for your low GIs. Do you know, my daughter married a man who was prone to eczema. So her little girls, they get little bits of eczema. And every now and then, she takes them off all grain and conquers it. So when they go to school, she bakes big slabs of sweet potato. Do you call it sweet potato? Yeah. And they take that to school and they just pick that up like a slice of bread and eat that. She half steams green beans and makes like a little dip for them, and they have that for lunch. The teachers come to her and say, we're amazed at your children's lunch boxes. One day the little girl said, Mum, we want lunch like the other kids. So she made muffins out of almond meal and squash and some raisins in there. And they were quite happy because they had their muffins. Now, it's a few years later now, and their eczema has all cleared up, and they have spelt bread in their lunches, and she can get quite a nice, light, soft one. You can't send the kids to school with heavy bread, right? And you can get some quite nice, light, spelt breads. Now, every now and then, if they overdo the spelt even, the little rashes come. Then she just takes them off all grain for a while. So I was there for breakfast one day when they were on their grain-free, and their ages are 5 and 7 and 10. And half the plate was lentils and the other plate was just steamed greens, spinach from the garden, and they're just eating it up. You know why? Because that's all they know. Now, if your child's used to Weet-Bix and soy milk, and you give them lentils and greens, they're not going to be very happy. Do you see what I mean? My daughter's girls ate it because that's all they ever have. Plus, they know that the itches go, and they certainly like that. That's why when you've got a certain condition, you've got to go really strict. Once you conquer it, you can relax a little. So my daughter says, the children, her girls, can have spelt sandwiches for lunch as long as they don't have bread at breakfast and tea. So at breakfast, they'll have fruit, they might have porridge, they might have a coconut yogurt, seeds and nuts. And then at night, she just cooks some veggies. They're at school, so she cooks them something at night. They usually just have vegetables. And when I go to her house, she has done some amazing things with vegetables. She has baked beetroot and baked sweet potatoes, and then she'll have green beans with a pesto sauce. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. She's learnt to make exciting things with veggies. So vegetables. So you can bake sweet potato, you can bake pumpkin, you can bake beetroot, and they're very nice if you have to take it for lunch. Cook them the night before. If you get up early, cook them then. And then protein. So what's the protein? The protein would be something with legumes. If you're taking a packed lunch to work, you might take your salad, a few baked or steamed veggies from the day before maybe, and then you might have hummus. You familiar with hummus? That's a nice dip. Or you might cook up some burgers with lentils or ground sunflower seeds. Or you might marinate tofu. You can get some nice marinades for tofu. I just grate ginger and garlic and lemon and oil and salt and herbs. Just that makes a nice marinade. And you can also always add nuts and seeds to your lunchbox. So if you need to take lunch to work, you could make something like that. And then if you're not able to have a big lunch, you might need something for dinner, and the best is soup. And you might only need to make soup twice a week and it'll last a few days. And the soup, vegetable, we've been having different soups every night. You know, just do different vegetables. If you've got married to a big strong man that needs a bit more, you might have tofu in, or you might have beans. Or dinner could be a smoothie. It's just whatever works. If you can't sleep because you ate too much, well, you're not going to do that again, are you? And if you can't sleep because you're starving, well, maybe you need to have a little bit more. But if I lie in bed at night and I'm a little bit hungry, I just say, get over it, Barbara, you're not in a concentration camp. You had a meal today. Because when you sleep, you don't know. So there's some of the things that you can eat. And basically, the meals that I have just shown you are very similar to the meals that I eat. I am not diabetic, and I have no need to lose weight, but I find that that sort of food, I have lots of energy, the weight just stays the same, I sleep well, and what does the Bible say? Prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. We live in a body that has the ability to heal itself. And Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. Now notice what I've given you. There's not a huge monetary outlay in this, is there? It's actually very simple. And there's no need really for herbs. Because your pancreas is the organ that balances blood glucose levels. And what wears it out is foods that cause blood sugar levels to go up high and fast and down high and fast. So you've really just got to stop giving the pancreas those foods. And as you can see, the water, the exercise, it all comes together. I have some questions now. A pile of questions. So let's go through the questions. What can one do for kidney disease that is hereditary? Both kidneys are in a great something condition, concerned, or great concern condition. Remember that genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. You see this list here, they all put a great strain on the kidneys. So these all should be stopped. Your kidneys filter your blood, and if the blood is thick, if the blood is toxic, can you see what a big strain that will put on the kidneys? And there are some herbs that directly affect the kidneys and will help the flow. Corn silk. Now I notice that corn grows here. So what you need to do is get non-GMO corn and organic, and save the silk, dry it out. Corn silk tea, and just pour boiling water on it. Corn silk tea directly affects the kidneys. Parsley, put parsley in everything, it's a kidney herb. Celery, again, ideally, they should be organic. I think every home should be growing parsley and celery. It's easy. It's really easy to grow them. And to enrich your soil, just dig your vegetables into the soil, let them break down. Couch grass, I don't know if you know couch grass. It's another kidney herb. I've had 2 people come to our health retreat in the last 18 months who are about to go on dialysis. And we cooked up parsley seeds, celery seed, couch grass, and we added ginger to make it taste nice, and it's anti-inflammatory. Eliminated this, got them exercising, drinking more water. If someone's got kidneys that don't work, they should never have a whole glass of water at once. Do you remember what I said the other day? Wake up in the morning, half a glass of water. Have you tried it? Get out of bed, get dressed, another half glass of water. Go to the bathroom, another half glass of water. Pray, another half glass of water. Bible study, another half glass of water. What's that? That's over 16 ounces now, yeah? Try and have at least 2 glasses before breakfast. If you've got time, 3 or 4. And before each glass, that little bit of salt. One girl came to us. 3 months later, she was 60. She said, my doctor says I don't need to go on dialysis anymore. We got her to drink a litre of this tea every day. And the parsley and celery, you put it in all your food. Psalm 104 verse 14, God gave herbs for the service of man. Kidneys must never get cold. So this area should always be warm. So where are your kidneys? Your kidneys, so there's my rib. You've got 2/3 of your kidneys under the rib, and then the other third is just up under the rib. So that area must always be warm. Be very careful in air-conditioned offices or places. You must keep those kidneys warm. So that's how you can look after kidneys. Good news for everyone to know because we've all got them. Is balsamic vinegar okay on a salad? If I go to a restaurant and there's a balsamic vinegar dressing, I'll use it, but I actually don't buy it or use it as a rule because I prefer the lemon. The lemon is a liver tonic. The lemon is an internal alkalizer. And of all your vinegars, balsamic is probably the only one that I would eat, but I don't because lemon is superior. Is kimchi and probiotic fermented foods okay? One of the best cultured foods is sauerkraut. And when you culture a food, you increase the B vitamins in them. So it is a good idea to include some cultured foods. What would be cultured foods? Sauerkraut. I don't usually do I think it's kimchi, it's a mushroom, isn't it? Yeah. I don't because it is fed by sugar and tea. I don't like the sound of that. And also because a lot of people I meet are dealing with yeast problems and the mushroom can feed that. But there's no need to go for that because you can do the sauerkraut and you can also do miso, which is like a soybean paste. It's also a cultured food. And your sourdough breads are cultured foods. Next question is, are pickled foods okay? And it also mentions the sauerkraut. And as I said, sauerkraut's excellent food. The pickled, you have to have a look. I keep away from vinegars. Vinegars can interfere with digestion. But if the pickled vegetables are made with the salt, they're fine. Like your olives. Olives are usually cured with salt. Is there a natural cure for tinnitus? There is. One of the main causes of tinnitus is Well, there can be a few things, or ringing in the ears, if someone has been exposed to loud noises. I had a man do our program who'd been in the war, with the big guns going off. So some damage has been sustained. I also had a man come to me who'd worked in the mines and the jackhammers and the loud noises. Sometimes rock singers can get it. Basically, they've sustained some damage by being exposed to such loud noises. But something that causes a blockage in the eustachian tubes, the eustachian tubes are tubes that connect your ears, eyes, nose, mouth. And that is the three main causes of blockage or excess mucus in those areas is the top three: wheat, dairy, and refined sugar. So eliminating the wheat, dairy, and refined sugar clears out the eustachian tubes, and that can certainly help. What is the best bread to eat and the best cooking oil? Well, we know now. What's the best cooking oil, students? Coconut, because it has no of those double bonds. And the best bread to eat would be your spelt sourdough. The sourdough process breaks down the protein or the gluten in the grain, makes it easier to digest. All wheat or certain wheats are harmful. I think we've covered that one. Even organic wheat today is the genetically modified. So the only really safe wheat is the spelt. Seawater. How clean seawater, is it really safe for drinking? Well, we're not really going to drink seawater, are we? And I've been walking along up to Princess Hotel, that area there. Is that Cove? The water's beautiful there. It's very clean there. Obviously, if you're near resorts where there might be a bit of grey water or sewage coming out, you don't go there. Obviously near the cities. But those waves are continually pounding through the sand, and that's constantly purifying it. So it is, and of course we're not going to drink it, but you might have a mouthful before each glass of water if you haven't got any Celtic salt or Himalayan salt yet. So it is safe if it is away from heavy built-up area. It says, now that I know the appendix has a function, what happens when it's removed? We have an amazing body with an ability to adapt and adjust. And so people have had their appendix out and their body functions well. But they need to be ever cautious of eating plant-based foods so their colon works well, making sure they're well hydrated, because they can be more prone to constipation than those with appendix. One lady said she had her right ovary removed because it had a cyst on it, and when she came out of theatre, the doctor said, "Oh, I took your appendix while I was there." Yeah, you shouldn't do that, because they can't put it back, can they? Can you reference the books Ministry of Healing and Counsel on Diet and Foods and the usefulness of the information in regards to our health? Ministry of Healing is an excellent book, and it is a book that I probably was one of the first books I read in regards to looking after the body. And what I love about the Ministry of Healing and Counsel on Diet and Food is their spiritual aspect. So they are constantly referring to the Bible. So two of my favourite books there. Even though they were written 100 years ago, they're still very applicable today. Now, when you stated the portion for a bowel release, what is the measurement? I did 1 part fresh water, 1 part hot water, and 1 part salt water. It's usually equal parts no matter what it be. So it could be 1 litre or 2 litre or 1 cup, as long as it's in that proportion. And I also mentioned that some people find 1 litre will get them moving, some people find 2 litres will get them moving, as long as it's equal parts. Question: with no gallbladder and pre-diabetic, and the understanding that whether you lose weight and your blood sugar reads normal, what can be done to get rid of the diabetes from the cell level? Oh, we all know that now, don't we? It's a good question, but as you can see, and as I took you into the cell, the effect of exercise, the effect of water, and the effect of those foods. This question is, I tend to hold my breath when listening, also when waking up in the morning. What's the reason for holding my breath? I'm not sure. Do you know, as you'll see on Saturday morning, sometimes we get into the habit of doing things, and sometimes we can be unconscious, but if someone's aware that they're holding their breath, that's the first step to not holding your breath. Most of the bottled pure water on the island is salt water purified. Is drinking this water harmful? My understanding was just about every house has tank water, is that right? But I guess they're referring to, I think when you get low you can top up with the purified seawater. Do you know when Michael and I had a holiday last year in Scotland, and we went to Edinburgh and we went on the Royal Britannica yacht? You could have a look at it. Do you know they have big systems in there for purifying the water from the sea? I thought that was very interesting. Do you know it's perfectly fine? The only time it wouldn't be fine is if chemicals were used, but there is no need to use the chemicals really. And what they used to do with the remnant, they would cool the boat system. It was actually quite interesting. And I guess in the Navy, on many ships, they would have those systems, yeah? When they're out to sea for a while. How is testosterone depleted and how is it boosted? Now, if you can wait, I'm going to discuss that on Friday night. And breast cancer, if we've got breast cancer, should we be eating soy? I will cover that Friday night, but a friend of mine did a thesis on soy, and when people ask her questions on soy now, she says it's real easy. God made it good, man mucked it up. So if you can get non-GMO, organically grown soybean, it's not a problem with breast cancer. What do I do with ovarian cysts? Is there a remedy? There is a remedy, and I'll be discussing that on Friday night. But meanwhile, you can apply castor oil compresses. Now, if you go to YouTube Barbara O'Neill poultices, you'll get a demonstration on how to make the poultices. But castor oil penetrates very deep in the body, and it can break up cysts, can break up fibroids, can break up ovarian cysts. That's the good news. What can one do for hot flushes? Stay posted, and on Friday night I will show you. How do you know which fruit and vegetables are non-GMO? The only way you know is if they're organic, unfortunately. Monsanto is so big that they win every court case, so it doesn't have to be stated. But if an organic farmer uses genetically modified foods, they lose their organic status, so that's about the only way you can be insured. And some people say, can you believe organics? You can, because the conventionally grown growers are always looking to how they can pull the organics down. So they go through organics with a fine-tooth comb. You have to go through a lot to get that stamp, and you only have to step sideways slightly and you lose your status. I have a friend who was growing organic herbs, and she went to the tip. Do you call it a tip, where you put all the rubbish? Dump. And she got some carpet that someone had thrown out, and she put it between the rows to stop the weeds in the path. Because in fact I think it's twice a year they test the soil to make sure it's still organic. And they found chemicals in her soil, so she lost her status, and it was from the carpet. So I know that they are very strict on organics. What's the homeopathic effect for brain function during and probably after someone has experienced a neuromechanical episode? I don't use homeopathy, I use herbs and I use lifestyle, because herbs I can grow and use, but homeopathy, it just seems to go into a strange area for me. Now, okay, so on Saturday morning I'll be looking at neuromechanical function. The brain is an amazing piece of machinery and it needs to be exercised, it needs to go to bed early, it needs lots of water, and it needs nourishing food, and it needs us to keep telling it that everything's very good. It's like this: if you say it's terrible, it will be, and if you say it's great, it will be. And there's a lot of research now showing how coconut oil can heal nerve cells. In the book Stop Alzheimer's Now, that book's not just about Alzheimer's, but it's about all neurodegeneration. And it shows how that our liver converts the medium and short-chain fatty acids in coconut oil to ketones, and ketones are neurohealers, neuroprotectors. And there are stories in there of people recovering from neurological problems using the coconut oil. So Dr. Bruce Fife, he says, how you got to do it is you've got to drop the carbohydrates right down, have generous fibre, good proteins and healthy fats, and supplement with coconut oil. And in some cases, he suggests up to 3 tablespoons of coconut oil a day, 3 times a day. So that's 2 tablespoons morning, noon and night of coconut oil, and how that can heal neurological problems. So there's lots in God's plans that we can use for healing, even the brain. So thank you for your attention. It's 8:30, time for us to get home and be sound asleep before the clock strikes 10. So we can get up nice and early and run along the beach and then dive in the water, is that right? So please bow your heads as we close. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for your goodness, your mercy, this amazing body you've given us, and the plants and the herbs that you've also supplied. I pray, Father, that we will each be diligent to adhere what we've heard, for we know that you will bless that. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Now just keep seated. There are a few announcements.
Good evening. Were you blessed? Amen. Just a quick announcement. If you want some more contact information, there are many people asking about how they could get more information. You can see them on the screens, either on the TV screens or up on the projector screen. If you're trying to get more information about what you've seen, you can email the church or Barbara's daughter for outside DVD presentations. They're also found on YouTube. Misty Mountain Health Retreat is the name of the place where Barbara actually does all her stuff. The books, you can buy them off a Kindle. It was stated that the books are sold out, but you can download it on Kindle at Amazon.com. Her book is called Self-Heal by Design. Lastly, remember, it starts promptly at 6:30. There are 2 meetings on Saturday, Sabbath morning, 9:30 and 11 if you can't make it tonight. But you definitely want to make it on Friday night. All right, so anyway, as you go out, please remember, just if you can, drop a donation. Questions are put in the question box, and you can pick up the question papers on the side or any paper that you put into the box, which will be answered tomorrow evening. All right, have a blessed night.